Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Sunday Messages. We are talking about one of my favorite tools today. Of course, it needs to be applied in the correct context, which I'm going to be telling you about today. But this is the minimization tool, or sometimes I refer to this as the no biggie rule. So I have a cute little story time for you that I think you will find funny, and it applies perfectly to this tool. So it's been fresh on my plate lately. I've been talking with a lot of people about it, and I want to bring it to you to help you out and give you some extra support. Before we get started, I want to remind all of you that there is a new live class that I am hosting. This is called Clown. It is going to be taking place on the 28th of this month, and I'm so excited for this because this is all about failure, humility, resilience, really honing your craft. If you are the type of person who finds yourself holding yourself back around your creations, or you're really nervous to express yourself or share your gifts, or really bring yourself fully into the world with your creations, this is for you. If you're worried about persecution, if you're worried about disappointing others, if you're fearing failure, if you're really gun shy around rejection as it pertains to your creative projects and your creative work, if you hold yourself back a lot, this is the place to be. This is the class that you want to take. This is the transmission that you are wanting to go to hear. And I'm just so excited because I feel like I have failed gloriously throughout many moments in 2021, and all that I have learned, I am packaging up into this class just for you. So it's comprised of one lecture and one Q&A. And I really want this to be oriented towards creatives, artists, entrepreneurs, people who really want to bring creations into the world. So it is oriented towards those who have creations or gifts, talents, and abilities that you might be feeling shy or restricted around, whether that be something from a wound of the past or something that you are just really apprehensive about. So if you feel like you could use some mojo when it comes to your creative expression, this is the place to be. And of course, we all knew that I was going to have to play with the clown archetype at some point in my work, and this is it. I'm finally doing it for you. So if you'd like to be there, again, October 28th, the ticket price is $333. You will not regret it. It is going to be amazing and wonderful and delicious, and I cannot wait to see you inside. Where I would like to start our conversation today is by understanding how brains work, okay? Because you have a brain that you are in charge of. And this brain has a very specific function. Now, brains are extremely powerful. And if you do not have a good set of reins on your brain, it's going to start running you. And this is where a lot of people are operating from. And the analogy that I like to use for our brain, or what we could call the mind, is it's like a wild horse, and you've got to break it. You have to break the wild horse. If you don't, it is not going to be rideable. It's not going to be enjoyable. So you have to get yourself to a place where you are in charge, where it behaves for you. But until that point in time, until you have enough practice with this type of mental discipline and you understand how to run your mind and ride your mind in a proper way, it does crazy things. It really does. When I say crazy things, I don't mean it doesn't make sense. Brains do make sense. They function in a way that's very rational and logical. Brains, in my opinion, are very easy to understand. They're very methodical. They like consistency. They like predictability and reliability. And also, how we have evolved has made it so that our brain is constantly scanning for danger. That's its entire job. The brain, if left alone, the one thing that it's going to do for you, and it's going to do really well, is protect you and keep you safe. And everything in your life experience has all added up into your brain having been shaped in a way that's conducive to survival in whatever environment you grew up in. Okay? That's the nutshell version of why you are the way you are. And regardless of what anyone else has to say, I can promise you and reassure you that you definitely and completely make sense. So back in college, of course, during my senior year, I had to take a lot of neuroscience classes for my degree. And one of those classes was sensation and perception, which basically you learn about all the different nerve endings and how your body communicates with your brain, and then how your brain interprets that sensory information. One of the things that we learned in there is that your brain is constantly filling in the gaps. So you can do like fun visual tests where you stare at a screen with particular colors, and then all of a sudden it goes back to a blank white screen or a black screen, and you will see the inverted color. And the reason being is that your brain is going to continue filling in that information. And the same goes for the majority of your other senses. If you touch something that you think is hot but isn't hot, you're probably going to jerk your hand away and say, ouch. Your brain is going to do that even if nothing burned you. Or peripheral vision. The majority of your peripheral vision is completely made up. The brain is just filling in the gaps. Perhaps you've heard of the blind spot. We all have this particular blind spot. I can't remember if it's up in the right or left corner of our eye, but it has something to do with the ocular nerve. I don't remember all of the details of it. But basically, we all have this blind spot that we aren't actually seeing anything through that space. Our brain is just filling in the blind spot to complete the full picture of our vision. So the point that I'm getting at is your brain is making things up all day. All day. It's making things up. It's pretending. It's filling in information even if no information is there. When it comes to the emotional piece of this, your brain is also making up emotional things. And this is what I would call the telenovela effect, okay? I'm going to go ahead and say I'm the creator of this term. I have coined this term. This is mine. I'm staking my claim because I've never heard anyone else say it. But basically, what I'm calling the telenovela effect is when your brain completely takes a hold of maybe a teeny tiny piece of information, perhaps the presence or lack of something, and then all of a sudden blows it out of proportion, where now you are living in your mind a full-blown telenovela. The drama, the scandal, the intrigue, the tragedy. It's very Shakespearean, if you will. It turns into this theatrical drama that your mind is then playing out, and a lot of the time we fall into the story. We get wrapped up in it, and worse, we start believing it. Because the thing is, your brain is doing so many other things that are highly functional and are highly supportive, like filling in your blind spot in your vision. It's doing that for you, and thank God it does, so that you have a full scope of vision rather than dealing with a horrific blind spot in the corner of your eye, in the corner of your line of sight. Rather than dealing with that, it's filling the gap in for you. We love that. Thank you, brain. You're amazing. You've adapted to do some pretty badass things. We love you. However, the telenovelas got to stop. Okay? The telenovelas are not helping you unless you're a screenplay writer. Now, of course, in a certain regard, this has a function. Evolutionarily, this absolutely has a function. If you were out in the woods, it's probably a good thing that you started to imagine lions, tigers, and bears. It's probably a good idea. It really kept you on high alert. It kept you safe. It kept you aware. It protected you. And that's all fine and good. However, at this stage in our evolution in the year 2021, generally speaking, in the vast majority of situations, this does not serve us. This only serves us if we are actually in a dangerous situation. So, for example, if I walked into a really frightening area, right? If I went and walked down to Skid Row right now, well, I mean, I wouldn't walk there. If I drove down to Skid Row and I started walking around, my intuition is on high alert. My brain is filling in a lot of gaps. It's going to say, oop, don't go over there. Stay away from that person. Chances are that dude is armed right there. You probably want to steer clear of that. It's going to be feeding me all sorts of information that would be incredibly helpful in that very unique situation. Now, of course, there are people who are living like that every day, legitimately living in survival, living in conditions that are so dangerous that they need this on full blast pretty much all day. You know, there might not be very much time when that isn't needed. However, more than likely, if you're listening to this podcast, if you're not living on Skid Row, if you're not under fire all day, or you're not in a war zone, you don't need to be buying in to what your brain is feeding you on an emotional level in terms of the storytelling, the telenovelas, the dramas that your brain is playing out. So a few weeks ago, I was eating lunch and my grandfather came and sat down and he was like, can I talk to you about a few things? I need to consult you on some things. And I said, yeah, sure. What's going on? And he started telling me about how upset he was that he was not in charge of some travel arrangements that he was having to engage with. Someone else was booking a room for him and he didn't have control over it, and he didn't want to upset anyone if he rejected the reservation or rebooked a room. And basically, by the time he sat down and started talking to me, he was 10 steps ahead of the present moment. Okay, so he was already in a telenovela about, if I do this, then my wife is going to be upset with me and I'm going to snub my brother-in-law and there's going to be all of these other issues and I'm going to be painted as the bad guy. Okay, so he was in it. He was in a full tilt telenovela. And with good reason, right? All of the things that he was telling me were actually quite logical based on the personalities of everyone that he was dealing with and things that have happened in the past. I completely understood why he was walking into this situation thinking and feeling and believing the things that his brain was telling them. He has a lot of data. He has a lot of reason to make these assumptions about this situation. However, the more he spoke about this, the more he was telling me about the telenovela that was happening in his mind, the place where things really started to cause problems was in the personalization of what was happening. So he had already gone so far into this that it turned into, I'm personally being attacked. I am being snubbed. I am being disregarded. This is intentional. This is a power grab. And when it started to get to that space, it really started to spiral out from there. Then it got so intense to the point where it started to dovetail with childhood wounds. Like, that is how deep it started to get. And so, of course, I'm sitting at the table just reflecting. And I'm like, all right. Pump the brakes here. The first thing is you don't have enough information. 98% of what was just said was either fabricated, assumed, or anticipation of something that hasn't even happened yet. So you have to completely detangle from all of that and just focus on what is happening in the moment. Now, let's go back to what brains do. Brains are in the habit of magnifying. So every time you're using your brain to focus on something, you're putting a magnifying glass on it. So every time he was putting his focus on this, it would magnify the problem. As soon as he started focusing on, I don't like this situation that I'm in, I want to do my own reservations, I want to book my own room for this trip, I don't want to be beholden or obligated to do anything for anyone else, and I don't like the inconvenience of someone else being in charge. He's also an oldest child. I feel that. I hear that. I understand. I don't blame him. But it wasn't rooted in anything that had happened in real time. This is all made up. Okay? So I told him, I suggest that you minimize this. Go into these interactions like they're no big deal. There is no problem. There is no issue. Everything's going to be fine. You're going to get the room that you want. This can be done cleanly and smoothly. There doesn't need to be any issue. So now, essentially, I'm talking him through the energetic shift in order to get the best results from everyone in this situation. This is also partly why I even created DOM, by the way. For those of you who are in DOM, you know what I'm talking about. You are in charge of how people come into your space. You, yes, you, the listener. You're in charge of how people show up in your space. So if you have already crafted a telenovela where now you're walking into these interactions defensive and guns blazing, expecting the worst from everyone, you are going to get some aggressive people who match your tone and match your expectations. And that's exactly what he started doing. So I'm doing my best to talk him off of the ledge. And at first he was like, Oh, I get it. You're just trying to get me to think positive. And I said, well, not quite. I'm trying to get you into a space where you are expecting something different than what you've practiced previously so you can actually extract that from these interactions. And I told him, if you get on the phone with my grandmother, and you're angry and frustrated and you're radiating that energy, she is going to match you with complementary energy. However, if you go in with the energy of, you know what, I actually decided to change that reservation because I really want us both to be comfortable while we're there. I really, really, really just want us to have a really nice room to stay in with lots of space and maybe a kitchenette and just something that we can be more comfortable in because we're really used to having luxury accommodations when we travel, and I want to keep that going. I love being comfortable when we travel. Nobody is going to argue with that. No one is going to be offended by your desire for comfort and you wanting to be in a space that feels good to you. And the reason being is that going in with what I just described to you, with that energy, is not a match for arguments. It's not energetically congruent with someone blowing up on you. It's just not. Now, some of you might be saying, Sydney, I have a mother who's mentally ill and I try to be chill with her all the time and she blows up on me no matter what. That completely different. I'm not unpacking the energetics of that in this episode. If you want to go deep on that, you need to get into Dom, because that's where I teach that. And where you'll be able to correct your energy once you're in that container, because I go in depth on all of that stuff. So set that on a shelf for now. But the point of this situation, as my grandfather was getting really ramped up and frustrated, I was able to talk him off the ledge. I was able to reframe some things for him. And he was like, okay, all right, I can get behind that. Okay, that feels much better. I'm like, all right, good. So when you walk into these conversations, that's the vibe that you want to bring. And almost immediately after, my grandmother calls. And he was like, okay, it's her. And he took a breath. And he was like, okay, minimize. No big deal. This is no big deal. And then he picked up the phone. And I didn't listen to the whole conversation, but I definitely eavesdropped a little bit just to hear how everything was going and see how he was doing. He killed it. He did so good. It was a beautiful conversation. It was so buttery smooth. It was happily ever after. Everything was so good. And it totally worked. And then, get this, on top of that, later on, when he went to go reorganize some of the reservations, he found out the person that he thought made the reservations for the hotel room that he was frustrated by, that didn't even happen. A secretary made the reservations with no knowledge of anything other than just book a room. Those were the instructions that she was given, and she had no clue that it was this type of accommodations that she had reserved. So not only did the entire story not even apply, nothing that he thought happened ever happened, for one. And second of all, he didn't even end up staying in that hotel. By the time this whole snafu had even taken place, and by the time we were even talking in the kitchen, while we were talking, they found a house to rent because it was more of a long-term accommodation. So none of this even mattered. Not one bit. It didn't even turn out the way he thought. It's like things were reorganizing while we were in the kitchen. The house that they were going to stay in was already being sorted out while he was frustrated. And this just goes to show that the more you make things a big deal, the more that it's going to inflame all of the nitty-gritty relationships and details and conversations that you have in your space. If you start minimizing, it will make your life a lot easier. Now, to be clear, this is not an invitation for you to go and invalidate your child's emotional experiences, or to tell your partner that, you're making up your feelings. That's not the point of this tool. The minimization tool is for energy and expectation. That's really what it's about. And I've made some graphics, like a couple of the guides that I have on Instagram. I call it no biggie. If you treat things like it's no biggie, then things are going to work out easier than if you make it intense labor for yourself. If you pack it full of resistance and frustration and discomfort, then that's exactly what you're going to get. But if you can at least soothe yourself to the point where you can relax a little bit and know that it's not a big deal and everything is ultimately going to work out, and it's going to be way easier than you expect because God is good and things work out, and people generally want to stay in a good state of mind. And my personal belief is that people genuinely want to be good to each other. That's the truth of humanity and of humans. People want to be good to each other. It doesn't always work out that way for a multitude of reasons. But if you're bringing the energy that makes it much easier for someone to be good to you and desire to be good to you, a lot of the time they will. And that's exactly what happened in this situation. It was preparing, getting the mind and the body and the emotions correct to enter these interactions. And then because of the minimization and the understanding of, I don't know what's going on, I don't have all the details, I don't know the full story. When you're able to remind yourself of those things, the truth, the highest possible timeline can begin to reveal itself to you once you lay off of the negative expectation. Expectation is really, really powerful. I mean, it is one of the most powerful things that you can master. But if you are using it in a way that is defensive and is coming from fear-based paradigms or survival or scarcity, it's going to jack you up. Okay? It's going to ruin your day if you're letting it jerk you around like that. So, the moral of the story is to minimize the telenovela, set it on a shelf. But once you feel yourself starting to get into the drama of it and the jumping to conclusions and the assumptions and the playing things out in your head, you've got to pump the brakes. You've gotta. Otherwise, you're not actually creating space for something better to happen or for something to work out. Then you are just in drama. And drama is going to unfold because you're a match for drama. You want drama. You're calling in drama. You're focusing on drama. You're telling a dramatic story. You're holding it. You're available for it. And people are going to bring their fucking drama to you. That's what they're going to do. For real. And if you don't clean it up, and if you don't pump the brakes, and if you don't stop yourself from going into all of those territories that probably aren't pleasant, then you are going to get exactly how you act and what you think and what you believe and what you expect from other people. And the best thing that you can do is just close the telenovela, set it on a shelf, leave it alone, go correct the expectation and what you're actually looking at. Because I can guarantee you, your brain is doing its job. It's doing that thing where it really, really, really wants to fill in all these gaps and fill in the blanks and know all the details and collect all the data. But the thing is, if you don't know and you don't have all the details, then that is where you want to come in with intentional storytelling. And this is where minimization comes in. Because in that gap of everything that you don't know, and you're used to telling a telenovela and telling a dramatic story and it turning into a Shakespearean play, if you're doing that, you are tormenting yourself. And you're also simultaneously becoming an energetic match for it. So you want to knock it off, okay? That is the point. That is the point. You can absolutely capitalize on the fact that you don't know everything, you don't have all the details, and there's an empty space for you to work with. But you got to ask yourself, what am I planting here? What are you planting there? I suggest you plant minimization. I suggest you plant everything's going to work out. I suggest you plant it's not a big deal. There's always going to be a solution available, or something will turn out better than I imagined, or who knows, maybe I end up meeting the love of my life on the way to that hotel room that I thought I didn't want. Who knows what could happen, but you gotta let yourself relax into something better and into something that's more supportive rather than something that is going to make you white knuckle the experience. And I would say collectively, one of the best things that we can do for ourselves and each other is learn to relax. And I am saying this from my own perspective of someone that I would consider to be one of the most high-strung people I know. So I promise you that I too have had all of these tendencies and I've done all of these things. And I also have an ego that loves to tell all these stories and loves to live for the drama. Okay, so I feel you, I understand you, I get it, but it's something that you can correct. Like, you don't have to stay in drama and terror all the time. It doesn't need to be that uncomfortable. So practice that this week and for the rest of your life, making sure that you can relax into the nice, soft cushion of it's really not a big deal. Everything's going to be okay. Everything is working out. People are going to be good to me. And see what happens. So that is the story for today. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Again, if you think someone could benefit from this, send it to them, share it with them, and I would greatly appreciate it. And one more thing that I want to mention, if you would like to work with me in 2022, if you would like to get into Eden, which is my 6-month mastermind container, and this is all about creating your own paradise, restoring heaven on earth, being embodied, feeling into the deliciousness of expansion, creation, pleasure, desire, all of the things. And you can also get my tarot readings in there as well every single month. Then the wait list is now open. I am going to officially start accepting applications starting in mid-November. So if you would like a head start, get on the wait list. If you want to make sure that you secure a spot, then get on the wait list. And I will email you and give you some extra time to send in your application before I open the floodgates to the whole wide world. So you are more than welcome to do that if you feel called to work with me. If my work impacts you and you would like to work with me in a longer form container, this is the best way to do it. I love, love, love running my mastermind. It is so fun for me. And on top of that, it's kind of like having an on-demand personal podcast of mine in your pocket all the time. Like, if you have something going on, you can literally just pick up your phone and say, hey, Sydney, I have this thing going on. Can you riff on this for a minute? And I'll say, oh my God, yes, absolutely. I've been waiting for this my entire life. Let's do it. And then I go on and on and on. Just for you. You get access to me. All of my magic is inside that container. So if you want it, if you feel it, if you're activated by my beautiful words, then go ahead and get on the wait list and I will see you inside. All right, beautiful people, I love you so much. Thanks for hanging out with me. I appreciate you. Have a beautiful week. Bye-bye. Bye.